Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to provide a more comprehensive review of the leaf blower as a direct attack firefighting tool. I'll be covering its performance against backfires, flank fires, and head fires, and I'll list the pros and cons that I've seen. At the end of the video, I will list the makes and models that I've used and the power requirements in order to do this job. Here you can see me using the leaf blower on a backfire, and every tool has its place. But for the direct attack of a backfire in a grassland, the leaf blower is unmatched by anything without wheels, and it is as good or better than about 9 out of 10 of the UTVs I've worked with over the last 26 years. And this thing will simply destroy an electric pump. The leaf blower is more effective if followed up with another tool bumping along behind it, putting out hot spots. This is true for any initial attack equipment, whether it's hand tools, bladder bags, UTVs, or even another engine. You could actually use another leaf blower behind it bumping along. One of the problems the leaf blower has, and this I'll talk about this throughout the video, is that while it will knock down the fire and put it out, it doesn't actually cool off the fuel. So reignition is a real possibility shortly after the leaf blower's gone by on the first pass. So it's one of those lookouts. If this becomes a tool you end up using, you'll see what I mean, and you'll see it show up in the video. A leaf blower has two big drawbacks. The first is it kicks up embers, and this seems really obvious. In fact, when people were first telling me they were using leaf blowers, I just couldn't imagine how they were controlling for all the embers being blown around. But as it turns out, embers aren't nearly the problem you might really think they're going to be. Partly you can control which way you're blowing the leaf blower and control for those embers. Additionally, depending on the wind direction, it gives you a little bit more control also. Regardless of wind speed and direction, you are simply always kicking up embers. While using this under a prescribed burn condition, this just wasn't a problem. This tool is really only effective against backfires and flank fires. So embers landing, if you think you're putting out a backfire, embers being kicked up into the green are going to roll right back into your black. So they're just not a problem when you're fighting a backfire. On a flank fire, this can become a problem, and as you all know, flank fires shift. Sometimes they flare up and are really big, and sometimes they drop down. If you're fighting that head to heel, then you're going to have problems. And you're going to have problems if you have an engine in water. But if you're fighting heel to head and are being careful, it probably won't be as big of a problem as you first imagine. I mean, when I was first thinking about leaf blowers, I just couldn't imagine this as something that would work. So it's something that's going to take some time to play with and get a feel for. But I think you can get that feel pretty quickly. So for flank fires, particularly under prescribed fire conditions, I didn't feel like those spot fires were a problem. Under wildfire conditions, this will probably change. Now for a backfire under wildfire conditions is still a backfire, and it won't be a problem there. But a flank fire under wildfire conditions is just a different beast altogether. It's unlikely your crew really has a feel for what the wind is going to be doing consistently. It means they're getting much more closer to something that, I wouldn't put a UTV up against a good rolling flank fire, and I definitely wouldn't put the leaf blower up against it. So those are kind of lookout situations you're going to have to play with as you get more familiar with this tool. And as you see, I'll take this up against a head fire, and it's a complete fail. All of that said, the embers are still really an issue. You can deal with it, you can plan for that, and you need to plan for that. If you're going to use this as a tool, that has to be something you have to look out for. The other lookout that comes from these embers is you're kicking them up everywhere, and you're going to be getting these hot embers in your face, so the user has to wear eye protection. So here you can see me putting out a flank fire. I start at the heel of the fire and work my way up to the head, and the leaf blower performs great. This will actually reignite in a moment. The duff is still wet, and it's not being blown down to mineral soil. So as the next fire rolls over, it heats it up enough and it reignites. On this slop, you can see the wind shift pushing the flank fire at me, and I'm suddenly fighting a head fire. I want you to see the fire reigniting after the air passes over it, so pay attention as that blower goes by. You can actually see it immediately reignite, and that's really because this isn't cooling off that fire, it's just blowing out the flames. This is about as big of a fire as I can take from the front. The humidity again this day was about 50%, and the duff layer is wet. Trying to fight that with hand tools would mean the fire would be in the face of the firefighters fighting that. So this is really getting to the end of what you can do with a handheld apparatus. So here's a slop over our wet line. I haven't been using a wet line yet, and at this point we actually are. And what I want you to see is how big that slop is and how easy it is to handle with just one person in a leaf blower. I also want you to see the embers jumping out behind me. If this was a long line and we were doing this, you would really create a big problem. So again, it's a great tool, but it needs management and learning in order to be able to use it effectively. I have black behind me and black to my left, so this seemed like a perfect place to test a larger head fire. And fortunately for me, that actually really died down before I got there. But as I step in, I successfully put out the flame front actually on the green fuel, and you can see it as the leaf blower blows over it. But with no cooling ability, it immediately reignites. It's being encroached on by direct flame and superheated air coming up off of that slope. It's hard to see, but as the leaf blower punches a hole through that, it's forcing the flames to wrap around my right and left side. And I actually end up taking a burn to my right cheek, and that's with the face shield down and the hot shield up over the lower half of my face. And then I melted some gear on my left side. So even in this little short amount of time, I'm in a lot of heat, and this just doesn't have the ability to really knock down and cool out a fire. I didn't think it would, but it was great to test. I really encourage you to rewatch those last 3 scenes and look at the fire's behavior and look at how it's reigniting even after I've immediately put it out. It's really one of the drawbacks of the leaf blower, but with management, you can actually make this work. Another neat trick you can do with a leaf blower is provide additional oxygen and wind pressure to the fire to control where the fire is going and speed it up. And this could be really handy around structures. And if you recall in that last video where we were burning out around that wooden deck, I could have really used this to get a much more complete burn and a safer burn in different parts as I was burning around it. So it's another tool, another option you can do with this. Another thing I like about this is it allows you to fight in standing woodies, and it just stomps other hand tools. So you can see here, I land on my rear, and you can keep fighting on your rear end. But in this next set of clips, you're going to see us going through standing woodies, and it's just blowing through it. They're just not something you have to worry about. So again, it's another option that this tool provides that really beats other hand tools. And if you're trying to take a vehicle down through here, even a UTV, the backpack blower is unmatched. So here we were going back through doing a mop-up, and I was just playing with this to see if we could actually operate this from the UTV, and I think you can. And you can see here I'm blowing out to mineral soil really easily. I would probably slow this UTV down and I would probably hang the backpack from the side of the UTV. So if you're going to do something like this, it'd be a really good idea to get this out of my lap. It's sitting on my legs at this point, but later on I'll have it in my lap. To just have it hanging on the side, and that allows you to go along very easily and blow things out to mineral soil. Again, it doesn't cool off, so it may not be the best mop-up tool. It certainly allows you to find hot spots because they'll flare up immediately as you go by. So there's benefit to that. If you're doing anything with buffalo chips or cow chips, I think maybe 3 people working in a staggered 1, 2, 3 pass on this could really blow out half a chain with no problem at all, just walking. So with mop-up, it could be a really, really good tool, and it can really allow you to find hot spots. And it could allow you to force those hot spots to burn out by adding extra oxygen and wind. Spot fires. The one thing this does is kick up ash and embers everywhere, even on idle. So right, you see me here walking by, it's just idling, and it's still kicking up ash and embers. Now, it's fairly cool where I'm at, but if you're not paying attention, you could inadvertently start another fire. For this next series of clips, I'm just throwing in all the spot fires that we created over the few days that I was using this. None of them were a problem because of the circumstances that we were in at that moment. A spot fire can be a really big problem if everything else is already going wrong. So this tool, while I love it, and there's lots of amazing things that you could do with it, I could easily envision a situation where you might get yourself where it's creating more problems than it's solving. I think for the bulk of your time using this, you'd be able to manage that. But again, I've only had, this is my 4th fire, so I've only burned with it 4 times, so I don't have the experience I'd like to have to really see all those problem situations. But it runs longer than a backpack pump. It has essentially more firefighting capability than a UTV in terms of the total amount of water. If you open up a UTV and start spraying, this thing will still be going long after the UTV goes and gets water and comes back 2 or 3 times. With one individual fighting alongside it with a extra gas and a flapper or rake or whatever hand tool, those 2 individuals would be extremely effective and much more effective than a UTV. In this next series of clips, you're going to see me try to cool off the fire while burning around this deck structure. And this, I think, is pretty early on, and I hadn't really thought about how to go about doing this. What I should have done is start taking bites out of the fire so that instead of having a solid straight line, it would behave more like putting dots underneath there. Or as you see the flames reaching up and licking the bottom of that structure, I should have gone from the bottom of the fire up, put out everything from the bottom up, and let it slowly backfire down and reduce those flames. Instead, I do it completely backwards. I start trying to spray air onto the top of that, knock it down a little bit. What's being supported by the fire from the bottom, and it's immediately reigniting. So it was a struggle at this point, but I think now looking back on it and having more time on it, I would have been able to manage this much more efficiently. I still think that the drawback of this is it can't cool that off, and if I'd had a backpack pump, I could have spritzed it, cooled that fire down, or a hose line or anything like that. So I'm used to doing that. It's a little bit easier to control. I think with a little bit of time on the backpack blower, you could accomplish the same task. And you can see where I get really close several times, but I'm not paying attention to really what I'm doing in the way I should be, and just didn't think of it. The second big drawback of the leaf blower is while it's awesome at knocking down fire, it doesn't cool off what you've just knocked down. Hand tools don't cool off the fire, but they do a better job of snuffing it out. You're actually physically touching the fire and pressing it down. The leaf blower doesn't do that. In fact, it gives it oxygen. So as soon as you leave that spot that you've just put out, you now have a lot more oxygen available, and you have hot fuel. So reignition is an issue, and you'll see a lot through this whole video where I've gone by, put something out, come back, and had it reignite. Yeah, this happens with even an engine. If you're pumping tons of water, you can come back and miss a spot. This is sort of different than that, and you'll see it once you start playing with it. You'll see it. So you need to, if you're going to use this, you need to incorporate that limitation of the leaf blower into your burn plan. So you're going to need someone within 10 to 20 yards behind that leaf blower, coming up behind them to mop out any additional spots that were missed. And that can even be another leaf blower, but it's something that you see really, really obviously, especially when I'm fighting the flank fires and the head fires, because that heat's rolling right back over what I just put out. So that's my review of the leaf blower. I've been firefighting in grassland systems for 26 years now, and this is really an amazing tool. It doesn't replace some tools. If you need to dig or need to scrape, yeah, it's not going to do that. But if you're just knocking down fire in a grass system, certainly for backfires and for flank fires under controlled conditions, it's actually an amazing tool. And if you ask yourself, can I do a quarter mile with the equipment I have? UTVs can't do a quarter mile. You know, if you're dumping water the whole time, you're going to have to go fill up. And the amount of time it takes you to go fill up and come back, this thing's still going. And I suspect you could probably go fill up a UTV 2 or 3 times. If the backup person supporting this leaf blower is carrying in their backpack a gallon of mixed gas and their tool is a rake, you're going to go for miles before you actually need additional support. So it's an amazing tool in that respect. You can deploy it from a motorcycle, you could deploy it in a Honda Civic, you could deploy it from a horse. I mean, it's amazing how versatile it is. You can give it to a crew and say, go down through that valley, put out this backfire and that flank fire, and I'll see you on the other side, and they can go do it. So it has some amazing potential. I wish I had more time on it and more experience with it to find the limitations that have got to be out there. There's a lot more that I can't see. I'm fighting in a really controlled environment. All those spot fires were done in 50% plus humidity, so I can imagine a 20% humidity and light and variable, this thing may be super dangerous. That said, it's definitely worth checking out, and particularly for some of you small land managers, this might be a much more viable option for you than trying to get your hands on a UTV as well as a slip-in unit. That's $20,000 worth of equipment. The top-end ones that you'd want to use, particularly ones with the electric start, run about $400 to $500, so you can get several of these, have a great crew set up, and do it for a fraction of the cost. The leaf blowers you saw here are the Stihl BR600 and the BR700, and they have a max air velocity in about the 230 mile an hour range, and the cubic feet per minute is 600 to 700, somewhere in there. These I really, really like. The danger that I had using this, and you can see it on that last video, is the kill switch is right there on the trigger. So if you inadvertently slip and kill it, you then have to reach around and pull start it. And I'm told from the people who use it that you can gain that skill set. You can reach around behind you, find the pull cord, and jerk it to a start. That's a skill that you're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to be in a good spot to do it. As it turns out, Stihl makes a push button start, and the button's right on the trigger. That model is the BR450 CEF. That's the electric start. So you push the button, an electric motor starts it for you and allows you to immediately start firefighting. So it solves that problem. The 450 is a little bit slower, has a little bit less air and a little bit less wind speed than the 600. The 600 has 238 miles per hour at maximum speed. This one has 221. So you lose a little bit of wind speed, but I don't think it'll really make a difference, particularly compared to the ability to be able to push that button and start it whenever you want. And this comes in a pull start, so make sure if you get the BR450, that'll be a pull start. If you get the BR450 CEF, that'll be the push start, the electric push start. So make sure you get the CEF version of this. And the models may change by the time you actually see this video and decide to buy it. So check with Stihl and make sure you're getting the right blower. This video was made possible by the Cooperative Burn Week in Iowa at the Loess Hills National Forest. A big thank you to that crew. Thanks for watching, and if you like it, give me a thumbs up.